The NCAA just said that the transfer portal is done. Gone. Not a thing anymore. This is Locked On Big 12.
You are Locked On Big 12, your daily podcast on the Big 12 Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Wednesday, everybody. Welcome into Locked On Big 12. I'm Drake Toll from America's #1 Big 12 podcast, Locked On Big 12. Thank you for making this show your first listen every single day. We start with TJ Pittenger as we talk about how the transfer portal is gone. It's done. The NCAA said we don't have that anymore. We'll also get into a terrible final AP poll that has BYU underranked, Iowa State underranked, and the Big 12 disrespected. Then Notre Dame to the Big 12. I think Brett Yormark should push for this in the offseason, even if that means giving the Irish some more money. If you hit subscribe, I get to keep my job. Without further ado, the transfer portal, not a thing.
Drake, the portal is absolutely insane. And we've seen things in the portal this cycle that have shocked even the person that maybe doubted that we would get, another massive surprise. This Wisconsin story with Xavier Lucas asking to go in the portal, signing a contract, the contract dependent on this, never entering the portal, but just unenrolling from a school and ending up at Miami. Doesn't shock anybody that Miami would skirt the rules on anything. But the portal, does it not even exist anymore? You don't even have to use it.
It's not a real thing. It's Fugazi. There is no transfer portal. It's not a thing. We've stopped. We've given up. It's away. It's gone away. It's gone away. And this isn't TJ Pittenger or Drake Toll or Joe from down the street going, "Hey, did you hear the news? No more transfer portal." It is legitimate based on what the NCAA has said. Per Ross Dellinger, here's the direct quote. This is stunning, by the way. NCAA rules do not prevent a student athlete from unenrolling from an institution, enrolling at a new institution, and competing immediately. Oh, no, I don't think I can perfectly emphasize the weight of that statement from the NCAA, where Wisconsin said, whoa, we have a binding 2-year NIL agreement with this kid. And the NCAA says, no, you don't. He cannot enroll and go elsewhere. And Wisconsin says, well, but it's an employment contract. The NIL agreement says he's an employee with us. The NCAA goes, well, if he quits, then he's not. And Wisconsin says, but, like, wait, he has to play. He can't go in the transfer portal because under NCAA rules, then you can't have, like, this isn't a thing. And the NCAA at this point is looking at Wisconsin saying, nothing you're saying is making sense. He can just kind of quit. He can quit his job, and his job is to play football for Wisconsin. And then if the kid wants to go to a different university, he can. And then the Big Ten releases a statement saying, this is really stupid. And again, the NCAA strong arms everybody. And if you're me, if you're you, if you're a general college football fan, what you derive from this is the NCAA is putting its hands up and saying, I'm done. I'm done. You wanted to appeal. You wanted 4 years of JUCO. You wanted an extra year eligibility. You wanted a COVID year. You wanted limited red shirts. You want medical red shirts. I'm done. They can leave the school. They can do whatever they want. Just exonerate me from this responsibility. And I don't care what they've signed. I don't care who they are. Let them go. Let my people go. The Pharaoh is giving up. Moses, take him away. And that's what we're seeing right now with the Lucas kid from Wisconsin. He's going to go to Miami. He's going to play. There's nothing anyone can do about it. And if you are a school right now who's got a kid on a 3-year, 2-year NIL contract, no, you don't.
Yeah, you made the Moses Pharaoh comparison. I compared it to the Wizard of Oz the other day. It is completely, the NCAA is so powerless that, and I just bought Wicked for $30. So you're welcome, Amazon Prime. But my kids wanted to watch it, so that I did it. It's the man behind the curtain. It's this big, great, powerful Oz pulling all of the levers and all the strings, pretending that this transfer portal exists, pretending that they have any kind of semblance of rule enforcement. And when the curtain gets pulled back, it's just a little measly old man sitting there pushing buttons, right? Yep. Doing absolutely nothing, but making you think that it's bigger than it is. And so it is. Is there, Drake, do me a favor real quick. Fix this. How do you fix it?
Well, if you ask the SEC, or at this point the Big Ten, you leave the NCAA. That sounds really dramatic, but we've had those conversations dating back over a year of, what happens if we just don't do this, and if we just don't have this governing body and we all kind of agree to leave? Are we stuck? Now, the NCAA handles a lot, and I've been told this by multiple sources. They handle a ton of legal work, paperwork, the having a governing body, and that effectively insures you from a lot of different things that can go wrong. But when that governing body that's supposed to protect you as a university from student athletes taking advantage of you and protect student athletes from universities taking advantage of them, when that governing body says, I'm done, I'm out. They can leave. They can do whatever they want. Let the kids run wild. Now, we as universities who already see that our money's being taken away because the NCAA is the one who lost the House case. They're the ones now mandating that, everyone pay us money. We're going bankrupt. And also pay the kids money. And now, if I am Greg Sankey, Tony Petitti, Brett Yormark, what's the point? What's the point? There has been so much ignorance and malpractice at the very top of those four letters that if I am a money-making business, I no longer want to be affiliated with. I work for a company. We just recently changed our payroll company. We didn't think the one we were using was doing a very good job. TJ, that payroll company helped us. We don't want to count the nickels and the dimes. We want to give it to somebody else. You be our legal team. You be our payroll team. They weren't very good at their jobs. So we left them, hired a different legal team, a different payroll team. We hired somebody to do it in-house. That's what eventually we're going to get to, because the NCAA now they have shown in the last 2 years complete incompetence.
It's almost like they know that anything that they try to do, any kind of standard from the past that they try to uphold, they know it will go to court. And the only entity that had a worse year than maybe FSU or other teams in college football was the NCAA. Every time they go to court, they lose. And so what could they have even done here for Wisconsin? Say like, oh no, you can't transfer because of this thing you signed or this agreement you had agreed to. They would have lost. They'd have lost in court, because right now I think the players hold all of the power. And I do think it's good that we've given athletes back a lot of the power, because they're the ones making the money anyway and generating the revenue. You don't buy tickets to go see the four letters of NCAA or ACC or Big 12 or whatever. You're going to see the players play. And so I think it's a good thing. I do think we've swung it way too far to the right, where you've got just absurd things happening with signing of contracts and then asking to get out of it or telling to get out of it. And schools not putting guys into the portal. Like, I don't think Wisconsin's blameless here. If he quits, he quits, right? Like, put him in the portal. So it seems like it's a good thing that we've given some of that power back. I don't know that we intended for things to shift this far one way or the other.
Yeah, if I'm the NCAA, it does. There is a common sense aspect to this, or you would hope a common sense aspect to this, where a jury of my peers, I need to please agree with the following: that if you are Wisconsin, it's really, really stupid to even want a kid for 2 years when the transfer portal is so rampant. I don't care if he's the number one best character guy on your roster. You avoid a situation like this if you just don't sign a 19-year-old, a 20-year-old to a 2-year contract. I mean, those guys can barely make up their mind as is, by and large. When I was 19, I was like, oh, well, that's whatever. And the transfer portal is such a big option for them. He wants to go make more money at Miami, have a better shot at the NFL at Miami. Let the kid go. Who are you as an administrator or a coach at Wisconsin saying, this kid, this 20-year-old, walked to my office, looked me in the eyes and said, Coach, I want to go somewhere else. I don't want to be here anymore. Me going, nope, you have to stay. What's that kid worth to you? What's he worth to your football program next year that you're enforcing this kid stay there, play for you, take the NIL deal that he signed? He can't leave. Nope, you can't quit because you signed this contract. Ha, you're stuck. I'm going to teach you a lesson. What are you, Wisconsin, getting out of that? What is that kid going to do for you on the football field? And let's say this: if you keep him just to bench him, now you're ruining a kid's life. Yes, to me, I hope, again, the jury of my peers looks at Wisconsin as the idiot, the big idiot here. NCAA being the bigger idiot as an umbrella on every subject. But here for Wisconsin, I know, like you said, the NCAA, they can't really push back because they'll get sued into oblivion and they'll lose. But for Wisconsin, this is a non-issue. Just be smart on the front end and let the kid go do whatever he wants to do.
Yeah, I hope that, and you're completely right. Like, what are you getting out of him, right? Like, he would just hold out and not play. You'd have to pay him anyway because you did sign the contract. You can't pay for play, all these things. But I do hope we get to a point where there's an understanding of, hey, you sign this agreement, you're going to stick it out. I don't know if we ever get there. I don't know if maybe making the players employees down the road, who knows, right? Who knows what actually ends up happening here? Putting buyouts into it like coaches have. Hey, you want to take this kid off our roster? You got to pay us to do it. Maybe that curbs some of this. I don't know, but it is insane on all sides. And, something to be interested in and continue to follow, because as crazy as we think this story is, just buckle up. There's certainly more coming.
Today's show is brought to you by Prize Picks. Prize Picks is where I go to make some money, and it's the best daily fantasy app out there. I'll say, hey, Prize Picks, I think that Patrick Mahomes will throw for 280 yards more. And I think, you know what, Travis Kelce, 70 receiving yards less. And you take those two players, you put them together, and win up to 1,000 times your cash. That's right, 1,000 times your cash with simple picks on Prize Picks. 10 million members, billions in winnings as well. For me, I'm about the hot takes. That Mahomes one might be one of those hot takes. And with their flex play, you can still double your money if one of your picks doesn't hit. And with the app, you get winnings fast, sometimes in as little as 15 minutes. Ready to run your game this football season? Download the app today. Use code LOCKEDONCollege to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's right, $50 just for playing. Don't wait. Take your game to the next level with Prize Picks. Prize Picks. Run your game.
Drake, the season is over. We have crowned a national champion after the first 12-team college football playoff. And the disrespect for the Big 12, for BYU specifically, we'll talk about them in a moment, continues on with our final AP rankings. And when will it ever stop, I guess is maybe the big question. But no love for the Big 12 here.
Yeah, the AP poll, the final AP poll, TJ, was frustrating. And frustrating in its inconsistency. I should also mention congratulations to Will Howard, Big 12 quarterback Will Howard, on that national championship that you mentioned a second ago. And man, for Arizona State to be 7, which they deserved before the college football playoff, and now they finally get their flowers. But then you look and BYU is behind SMU after blowing out Colorado, proving they should have been in the college football playoff conversation, and they still get a snub at 13, saying that, hey, if we were right all along, you still wouldn't have been in the college football playoff. And I think that we can put to bed that Boise State is a better team than BYU or even Arizona or Iowa State or Arizona State, and yet there the Broncos are still in the top 10 at number 8 overall. Or that BYU is probably better than Indiana, and Indiana sits at 10, but the Cougars at 13. So for Iowa State, BYU, Arizona State, all three who performed really well in the postseason, I think the Big 12 needed more love in this final AP poll. I guess it's what do you, at what point do you start expecting this and stop getting upset when it happens and just accept it and roll over? That's what I'm sure Brett Yormark is asking himself right now is, will there ever be change? Will there ever be respect by and large for Big 12 schools in the preseason, in the postseason, in the midseason when it comes to the AP? We saw all year long, a lot of these voters don't even have enough credentials to be voters. We watched one guy after Notre Dame beat the doors off of Navy rank Navy ahead of Notre Dame. I don't know. I wish there was a vetting process to look at the AP poll voters and say, hey, it is very illegal the week after something like that happens, Notre Dame and Navy, to put Navy above Notre Dame. But no, they can do whatever they want. They exercise that right. And once again, they're the ones who look like idiots. It's just fun message board material for college football teams and coaches to look at and go, wow, that's really, really stupid.
You asked the question of when do we stop getting upset and just expect this? I'm not there yet, right? I feel like as a I don't know, freelancer. I don't know if that's the right word.
You play it down the middle. You're objective, right?
Yeah, like I don't really care. I've been to Big 12 games this year. I've been to ACC games. I've been to SEC games. I didn't go to the Big 10 this year, who ultimately won the whole thing. But I don't care. I truly don't. I watch all of it. I love all of it. I'm a passionate college football fan, but you asked when do you stop? I haven't gotten there yet, and so maybe Yormark, a little less hair than I have, has pulled all of his out and isn't still frustrated about it. But you did mention something. It goes back to the preseason, and we're going to do the same thing next year. We automatically rank certain teams higher because of their talent profiles, because of whatever, right? The conference affiliation they have, whatever you want to say, and essentially every conference but the Big Ten had a bunch of teams go 10-2 this year. Like, that's just what we ended up having in just about every conference, right? There was some variation with that slightly. Clemson gets in, but Miami went 10-2. So that's essentially what we had. And for some reason, 10-2 in one conference, just because of the way that rankings start out, 10-2 and a loss to a bad Auburn team or a loss to a bad Florida or Kentucky team, it just doesn't impact you because, hey, at one time that was a top 10 team. South Carolina has a top 10 win against A&M from this season, but we know that that's not real. We know that that's not really a top 10 team. So early season rankings, preseason rankings through the year, we really should re-rank everything and say, well, no, you had one top 10, you had one top 25 wins because by the time you ended up playing your entire schedule, everybody else you played ended up stinking. Like Georgia Tech has a top 10 win against my Seminoles this year. Does anybody really think that Georgia Tech beat a top 10? You know, the AP poll doesn't even vote after week 0. So guess who also has a top 10 win? Boston College. Does anybody really look at Georgia Tech and Boston College and say, oh, man, those top 10 wins they had to start the year off were impressive? No, you look at Florida State and say they were dog crap. And so the problem is with the final rankings. The bigger problem is with the preseason rankings and the fact that we use an arbitrary metric to then guide our thinking for the rest of the season.
Well, a big piece of this is that arbitrary metric is based off of, in a large way, recruiting rankings. And if your rivals are ESPN or On3 and you're ranking these recruits, and some of this is pay to play kind of deal. And next thing you know, a win over top 10 Florida State in week 1 is even better because, wow, on paper, they are so good. Your strength of schedule is going to boost because they have 15 guys who were rated as a 96 overall coming out of high school on the ESPN grade. And so when strength of schedule is by and large determined, or FPI by and large determined by the athleticism on a school's roster and the number next to their name, we should take that out until week 6, week 7, week 8. There's a reason we don't rank the college football playoff teams until later in the season, and that is because you want to see the full body of work in the college football year. And at that point, at week 8, hey, we've seen enough of your body of work to give you a number by your name that's a little bit more appropriate. That's one of the few things the college football playoff committee gets right. Whereas in the AP poll situation, they can keep you out of the top 25 of the preseason, a la in Arizona State. And then at the end of the year, they can kind of do whatever they want with you because preseason, you weren't supposed to do this. Now you're the chippy underdog, and congratulations to you. I guess we could give you a little bit of a boost or a bonus. We'll put you at 7. Or BYU, who was supposed to finish 13th in the Big 12, and they end up far exceeding expectations, winning 11 games this season. And it's still, I know you went on the road and beat SMU, but we're going to keep you behind SMU. I know Ole Miss had some really crappy losses in SEC play. We're going to keep you behind Ole Miss. I know that Indiana has the same record and their strength of schedule is not as good, and we always value strength of schedule. But in this scenario, we're not going to value wins or strength of schedule. BYU, you have to sit behind Indiana. I just want to know, I wish, again, we didn't have these preseason rankings that we hinge so much of college football on. I want to know, can there be an objective way, a computer that takes everything into account here, not pay-to-play recruiting rankings, not your preseason ranking, not giving you a strength of schedule bump by beating an eventual 4-8 team who at the time was number 9 in the country. I want to know if there's an objective way to handle college football so that the Big 12 doesn't lose money. We lost a lot of money because BYU didn't get the same respect of a Boise State or an Indiana or anybody from the SEC that was sitting around the college football playoff rankings. And we lost money because Colorado lost its bowl game. They had to. They played a Big 12 team, you know. So many aspects like that where the Big 12 teams get the short end of the stick. And part of that are the AP voters and ultimately these polls that affect where our schools rank and where the money comes from.
Yeah, it's not like the Big 12 doesn't have talent, right? You win the Heisman, your former quarterback wins the national championship. Shador could be the number 1 or 2 pick overall. Scadaboo way up there in Heisman voting too.
TJ, Will Howard was never a full season starter at Kansas State. A backup 3 times running, and then Avery Johnson replaced him at Kansas State his final year there for a couple of games. That's the guy that led his team to the national championship.
And maybe the best part of this, the best, worst, however you want to look at it, is the team that BYU is slated right behind.
Yeah.
And don't talk to me about that win against SMU was early in the year because guess who's 2 behind SMU? Clemson, who beat them late in the year. So it is just a colossal failure of the way that we put this together. to not only, okay, well, the early season win, okay, they were different teams by the end of the year. They really weren't. They were different teams by the end of the year. Okay, SMU lost their last 2 games. BYU won their last couple. So, and then if you want to go with that argument, then why is Clemson not ahead of both of them, right? Mm-hmm. Why is Clemson, who beat them in the last time they played each other, why are they not ahead? So, yeah, I don't know. I got a lot to complain about and probably not done this offseason doing it. But on day 1 of the offseason, here we are complaining.
Yeah, no kidding. And I think we deserve to, because now more people access to social media. And I think 2 things. Access to social media gives everyone an opinion, and at this point, that's probably good. Public perception is going to lean the way of the little man, the Big 12. Right now, everyone's mad at ESPN and the SEC. No one's rooting for them, by and large, when you ask the public. That's a positive. And 2, our new era of college football, where ESPN owns the SEC, they're going to continue to drive that propaganda. You see it in the final AP poll. The final college football playoff poll will reflect the exact same thing. And until that changes, I will continue to complain because I know I'm right. Today's show is brought to you by Talkspace. Therapy is a game changer. It can help manage stress, improve sleep, communicate more effectively, but finding the right therapist, fitting sessions into your busy schedule is hard. That's where Talkspace comes in. They're the leading virtual therapy provider, making it easy to get the help you need. It's affordable, accessible as well. With Talkspace, signing up is simple. Match with a licensed therapist in 48 hours. It's convenient. You can have sessions from the comfort of your own home, message a therapist between appointments, and covered by most insurance. For insured members, there's a $0 copay for many of them. It has never been easier to prioritize mental health. As a listener of this podcast, you'll get $80 off your first month. That's $80 off your first month. If you go to Talkspace.com/LockedOnCollege, enter promo code SPACE80 to match with a licensed therapist today. Go to Talkspace.com/LockedOnCollege, enter promo code SPACE80 to get $80 off your first month and show your support for this show. That's Talkspace.com/LockedOnCollege, promo code SPACE80.
Drake, your Mark's pulled some rabbits out of his hat.
Yeah.
Is there any way he could pull this one? Like, and what would a potential Notre Dame Big 12 marriage mean?
I don't think that Notre Dame would walk into the Big 12 conference and win the entire thing day 1 by and large, going away and then dominate the entire league. I think that would be your selling point, though. If Notre Dame is going to join a conference, and I do think they should, then the Big 12 has to be an option on the table as one of the big 3 conferences in America. You can go to the SEC for Notre Dame. You're not going to fit. I don't think they want to do that. They've already been denied 4 times by the Big 10, so there's bad blood there. Understanding those 2 conferences don't have a very comfortable in with Notre Dame, the Big 12 has a couple of key moves prior to Notre Dame away from having a shot at the Irish, one of those being a North Carolina or a Miami. If the ACC falls apart because Florida State is suing, it's likely because Florida State and Clemson want to go to the Big Ten. They want to go to the SEC. And from there, Notre Dame, another viable option would be, hey, Jordan Brand, North Carolina. Hey, the city of Miami. Let's pair things together and us 3 go make the Big 12 on par with the SEC and the Big 10. That could be enticing to their athletic department. Do I think this is very likely? Not yet, but it could be. And one source makes the case. This is onefootdown.com. They're the SB Nation affiliate for Notre Dame. Says, hey, looking at the Big 12 conference, there's Oklahoma State, TCU, West Virginia. They have cachet. And the Irish haven't played Texas Tech or Kansas State, but they're fun opponents to see. And the Big 12 would have a fun basketball atmosphere with Houston, Kansas, Baylor. They also make the point that the argument for joining the Big 12 mirrors arguments made for independence in a bit. You have an opportunity to win. Now, in independence, and where understanding strength of schedule is hopefully becoming something that we look at more closely moving forward, that Notre Dame can build whatever schedule they want, go 12-0 and make the college football playoff every year. I'm hopeful that will change soon, but with a TV contract like the Big 12 has, with stability like the Big 12 can give, and then a schedule that Notre Dame feels as though it could win with, this makes sense. The quote says, a relatively soft schedule in most years that would create an easier path to the playoff. Unlike independence, this path would also give the Irish the ability to ride the soft schedule all the way to a first-round bye. There are layers to this. If you want the Irish to join a conference, you want them to do it quickly, you want them to win quickly, the Big 12 is going to be the place to do that from Notre Dame's eyes.
I know that they have the soft schedule or the partial schedule with the ACC. They would obviously lose that, pick up a full schedule with the Big 12. Notre Dame has always, had prided themselves, if that's the right way to say it, on scheduling tough out of conference. They don't play FCS teams. And so they can still fulfill some of those rivalries that are really important, whether that be with USC, whether that be with Michigan, bringing that back, whether that be with Navy or some of the service academies, whatever kind of aspect they're looking at. And it would add some legitimacy to their schedule, right? Their schedule wasn't incredibly difficult this year. Some of that had to do with Florida State and USC being down. If those programs are performing the way that we think they should, probably looks a little bit different in November for them. But I do think that this would create a chance for them to schedule a little bit tougher. You could still pick all your out-of-conference stuff. You could still keep with the rivalry stuff, but playing against a BYU, a Colorado, if Coach Prime's still there, other places you mentioned, Kansas State, wherever, could be really big for them in that regard.
Yeah, I am. I'm very excited by the prospect of getting Notre Dame to a conference, because this is not very fair that one school gets to pick their own schedule. And sure, history has shown us Notre Dame's not going to shy away from big opponents. They'll schedule an Ohio State in the regular season, but what they can do is, in a year like this, like you talked about when Florida State is down or USC is down, ride the wave of a fairly easy schedule, and easy enough that they can lose to Northern Illinois and still go 11-1. Ride that schedule to the college football playoff. And really the only downside for them being independent is that you lose out on that first round bye, as I mentioned earlier. But I know the sample size is small. This season, no team that got that bye won their first game of the college football playoff. So I don't think Notre Dame is screaming, give us a bye, because that's not, as it sits, that is not something that Notre Dame feels like it should need in the playoff format as it is. However, when you talk about Ohio State or UCLA or the teams in the Big Ten, that's where I lean is, hey, if you're not going to join the Big 12, and I can make cases for why Notre Dame should, they should at least be a very viable candidate for the Big Ten conference. Reason being, they get a conference's payout to themselves. They get a seat at the table in every college football playoff conversation. We're currently talking about changing the format, the bye format, and re-ranking teams and then doing all that. You have to vote unanimously amongst the 10 conferences and Notre Dame. Their athletic director gets to play commissioner, gets so much power in the hands of one person, not 16 schools all vying for this vote. No, one person gets to call a shot that could alter the entire playoff format just because we see Notre Dame and NBC as this big, powerful entity. What the college football playoff has to do is put its foot down and say, hey, look, we can't continue to operate with this one team doing it their own way. It was cool when Penn State did it. You know, I mean, okay, wow, there are different. Was Florida State independent at one point? Like there are major schools that have done this before, but in this era of college football, we can't let one institution just skate by, playing by its own rules and making up things at the end of the season. And I can only hope, and I don't hate Notre Dame, love Marcus Freeman, wish they would have won the game. I hope that they go 10 years without sniffing the college football playoff and realize, oh, shoot, we didn't make any money from the playoff for those 10 years. Trying to rig the system where we get all that cash and don't have to split it up, backfired. I really, really hope it backfires so they do end up with those awesome rivalries like a USC or UCLA or Notre Dame in the Big Ten, or quasi-dominating, in their mind, the Big 12.
There's some talk in the ACC about maybe trying to shift some revenue around and make things more enticing for Clemson and Florida State to stay based on TV and things like that. I know that the Big 12 doesn't necessarily want to get into a Texas-Oklahoma situation that they were in before. Would your Mark ever be open to the idea? Could he get other presidents on board with the idea of sweetening the pot for Notre Dame to come in?
You would have to. I don't think you need to do that for Miami right now based on their conference situation. They will end up being desperate if the ACC falls apart. If Florida State and Clemson jump ship and that conference ends up going under because the likes of SMU and Cal can't support it, then Miami needs somewhere to go. The Big 12 is probably the most viable option, considering the Big 10 and the SEC will not bite there. So while they seem desperate, Notre Dame is not. Brett Yormark would have to call the same as you would with a Florida State or a Clemson and say, look, if you want things to be weighted in your direction. If you think you're the big bad boss with the big brands and Florida State's got Saudi Arabian money and Clemson's winning football games, then come to our league. We'll build it on a scale to where your winnings are a direct correlation to your winning. And if that's the case for Notre Dame, hey, come make even more money, take a bigger piece of the pot than everybody else. If I'm Cincinnati, I can't be pissed off at that. If I'm UCF or Baylor or Texas Tech, oh, you're giving that. No, because that scale is going to work for everybody and all involved. At that point, too, if let's say the Big 12 says, hey, Notre Dame, Clemson, Florida State, North Carolina, we will unload the Brink truck for you to come to our conference and give you 50% of a 20-team share, everybody's going to be super ticked off. But if it means the ultimate salvation of the conference, you have to do that. Brett Yormark's going to have to do something if the SEC and Big Ten continue the separation they've created from the conference of the Big 12 from a money standpoint. That sounds really bleak, really dramatic, but truly, you need anchor brands that are going to keep you afloat when this really hits the fan.
Miami, Notre Dame, North Carolina, if they could pull in like a Virginia, maybe. Yeah. If they could go get the Atlanta market with Georgia Tech. I know that's not the sexiest brand, but a Georgia Tech would certainly help.
For some reason, Louisville makes a lot of money, and I don't know why.
Louisville would be really good. Realignment has somewhat died here during the season, which is fine. I like actual football more than hypothetical conference shifting. Yeah. But now that we're out of season, again, the day after the national championship, it is fun to talk about. It is fun to speculate on. We will probably both do it a ton, probably on our own and together. But where can people find your content, your work, and more thoughts on this?
At Drake C. Toll or at LO Big 12 on Twitter, wherever you find your podcast, and YouTube with Locked On Big 12.
Not to take shots at anybody else, but the best college football show that exists on the Locked On Network, if you ask me. So
you said it, not me.
Thanks, Drake.
Of course.